Good morning! Okay, class, good morning. I am your instructor in ARD 101 or Design 1. And that's the introduction to design. So, this is your first design subject, our design course in architecture, and we will now proceed to the content of this course. And I'm looking forward that this is going to be an enjoyable, fun, exciting, stress-free semester for all of us. Although we are here in the situation of pandemic, we are therefore challenged to settle for something different way of delivering our lesson, and you trying to learn whatever we are going to discuss. Tama na ng introduction. We will now proceed with the content of my presentation this afternoon, and this is for those, you can use this, especially for those who cannot be able to attend our synchronous session later on. Pasensya nyo na kasi medyo marami kami ngayon dito sa office. Sumisigaw pa yung department head namin, no? Excited na excited sa lesson. So, yung mga medyo gamay na ingay, medyo ibaliwalain lang natin. Discuss lang natin yung mga mas important. Sorry. Okay. So, anong obrahon ta? Okay. Pabayaan nyo na muna yung shades ko kasi kung tatanggalin ko yung shades ko, ito yung tsura ko. So, wala munang shades. So, design 1. Introduction to design. So, here's the course outcome. Why have I included this one? But let me just read this to you. So, this is the goal of our this first semester in design 1. One is to learn the nature of architecture by enabling them to discover their ability to manipulate basic forms and shapes into basis of architectural forms. Woohoo! Learn the basis of architectural. No, nailanggit kaya. No, hindi mo kasaho. Learn the basis of architectural design. Woohoo! And also, this is the module 1. The topic for this module is, what is architecture? Ano gid bala? O ano ba talaga yung tinatawag nating architecture? Tama ba yung iniisip ninyo about architecture kaya pinili niyo yung ganitong course? O baka nagandahan lang kayo sa pangalan ng architecture or yung pangalan ng architect? Baka nabigla kayo or baka sa discussion natin ngayon,
ang ganda ng shades mo, sir.
baka sa discussion natin ngayon, baka maliwanagan kayo at saka may chance pa kayong mag-quit. Hindi kasi sir, kung tatanggalin ko to, itong tsura ng anak ko. So that's why I have to wear my shades, no? So, sana pagkatapos ng discussion natin ngayon, maliwanagan kayo kung anong architecture para kung medyo nag-iisip kayong mag-quit, at least maka-quit na kayo ng mas maaga-aga pa. Joke lang. So, ang dami ko nung sinasabi, pero isa ka pangalawang slide pa lang to. Mamaya-maya kakain na tayo. May 57 slides pa. Oo. So, 59, hindi ko muna ginawang 60. 59 lang muna. So, 2 slides na yung natapos. And we are now into the third slide. Module objectives to demonstrate knowledge about the nature of architecture, determine the scope of architecture profession, and identify the different activities of an architect. So somehow at least by this discussion or topic, at least you have a glimpse of what we are doing as an architect, and you will have a glimpse of what you are going to do later on when you become an architect. So we will discuss about the meaning of architecture, and of course the other profession. Introduction lang, mabilis lang. Scope of practice of architecture. So what is architecture? Yun yung tanong. So according to Winston Churchill, we shape our buildings and afterwards our buildings shape us. That's the reality. That's the truth when you talk about architecture. We design the buildings, but the buildings that we have designed has an important effect in our life. It can somehow make our life easier, more convenient, but if it is not designed well, the effect is the opposite of what I have just said. So what is architecture? A good definition was provided by Roman architect si Vitruvius in the first century AD in the first no, first century AD in the first of his famous collection 10 books of architecture. So what is architecture? So later on we will be discussing more on that. But according to Vitruvius, he said that architecture was a building that incorporated utilitas, fermitas, venustas. So when you talk about utilitas, it speaks about the commodity, the function, the use or the utility of the building, which is very essential, which is very important when you design a building. At the same time, for Mitas, it speaks about the firmness, the strength, the construction method, the technology, so that the building will be erected in such a way it is safe and provide safety to the and it's safe and stable and strong against some occurrences such as uh, earthquake, and other forms of natural disasters. And of course, Venustas, which speaks about the delight that the design can bring to anyone, the attractiveness, the appearance, and the aesthetic. So if you're thinking that architecture is just more on the beauty, no, it's wrong because it is a combination of three different aspects no, given by Vitruvius, such as function, aesthetic, and of course the strength of it should be combined in architecture. So I cannot just proceed this discussion without making you understand the basis of the architecture practice here in our country. So, as first year architecture student, I would like you to understand, have a glimpse of some important backgrounds, no, or basis of the practice of architecture or the architecture profession. So we have the RA 9266, which is also known as the Architecture Act of 2004. This is the basis. This is the guide in the practice of architecture here in our country. So based on that law, architecture is the art, syempre art, science, or profession of planning, designing, and constructing buildings in their totality, taking into account their environment in accordance with the principles of utility, strength, and beauty. So yung law na RA 9266, if you are going to look at the definition of the of architecture in that law, you can determine that part of its definition was based on the ideas or idea of Vitruvius, yung diniscuss natin kanina. Utility, strength, and beauty. Combination of two, that's combination of three, that's architecture. No? Okay, okay, okay. Okay pa kayo dyan? Edit ko lang na. Karon. So, it's the art. Siyempre, art, it is one way of expressing our ideas, or sometimes even our emotion can be expressed through art. Science, because architecture has accuracy, mathematical computations that we have to consider, and also based on this definition, environment. No? Siyempre, we have to consider our environment, and it should be in accordance to the utility, strength, and beauty according to Vitruvius. So, let me just share with you this slide. The difference between architecture and a building. Any building cannot be, not all building can be an expression of architecture or can be an example of architecture, no? But architecture is equals design before building, no? So architecture is designed buildings, spaces, and environments. As we progress, or as you progress as an architecture student, you will understand these things more, no, as you continue your in your architecture school. That when you talk about architecture, buildings, spaces, and it has something to do about the environments, which has which has to respond to the needs of those people who will be utilizing the structure or the building. So, if there is no architecture, if architecture is not applied into the buildings or into the design of the building, here's what will happen. So I'll just you will see some examples of that. Kaangay sin no? Na the beam is very dangerous to be used for the use of human. It can cause anyone's head to be broken, to be damaged. So, and also this one, no access, but okay, okay, yun. So, very good design, no? Can you see? Okay, let's proceed now. So, hindi tumama yung design ng exit stair dun sa mga exit doors. Sometimes, yun, may garage, pero walang ramp na papunta. So, gano'n, nakita nyo, na-imagine nyo, do you imagine yourself using these stairs? And, wow, no, very good, at least safe, no? Kasi may gate, pero open pa rin. So, yun, if you want to have a good discussion with each other, you can use this toilet, face-to-face. Yun, there is a stair, and there's an improvised walk, or going to the, going to the door. And imagine yourself using this. So, yun. That's an example of buildings that was not properly designed. Then there's a negative effect to its users later on. So, when you talk about the context of architecture, of course, it has something to do about the natural environment. It should be very much considered. Also, it should consider the effect of the design to human and to the other existing structures within the vicinity of a proposed structure. So, an architect, no? A classic movie. So, here are some examples of what we call star architects or star architects. So, in your history of architecture and probably also in theory of architecture, you will get to encounter more of this, and you will get to know the stories that they have as an architect. So one of my favorite here, of course, naman sila paborito ko, no? But of course, Le Corbusier, Frank Lloyd Wright. My most favorite among all the star architects, si Frank Lloyd Wright. Okay, sige. And also Norman Foster. Then, who is an architect? No? Who is an architect? The word architect is derived from the Greek word architekton. Now, here in ESATU, the group, or I mean, the organization of the architecture students under the architecture department is called architekton. So when you talk about architekton, when you say architekton, it means master builder. Builder. The one who supervises and the one who designs buildings. Ano ma'am?
Na-post na to siya pagtapos.
One who designs buildings and supervises their construction. So nag-design sa mga buildings.
Kagulo to.
Oo. Manyaga na sila ma'am. Mag-discuss lang panay.
Sige, ikaw na.
One who designs buildings and supervises their construction. Okay, so that's what an architect is doing. Architects are licensed professionals trained in the art of design, art and science of building design. They transform needs into concepts. Wow. So they transform needs, no? So yung needs of the client, needs of the end user, needs of those people who will be using the building, you determine that as an architect, and we transform it into concepts. When you talk about concepts, that's the idea on how we can provide the solutions to the given needs or problems, no? And then develop the concepts into images. That's why we create some visualizations such as sketches, from the concept, then sketches, then translate it into a detailed plan, and translate it into an actual structure later on. No? That's why yung lapis, no? So let me just share with you, yung lapis, very ordinary, very simple, pero most of the structures that were erected here in the city, in the country, and other parts of the world started, ay hindi galing ni lapis, no? This is pen. Started with pencil, or if you're using pen, started with pen. So then we cannot undermine the value of a pencil or an ordinary pen because it's where the concepts, the idea started or first translated. So next, the architecture profession. I'll just finish this, sir. Then we'll have our lunch. Candid ni pati mga mo ni recorded. Yung mga segue ko nga mo ni recorded ni. I-send ko ni dayon sa ila. Okay, are you still there? I'm still here. The architecture profession. The architecture is a profession of practice of providing service which includes many different disciplines while the overall aim of an architect is to design buildings. Later on, you will realize that it is not just buildings that an architect is designing. You will also see the architects, no architects who are also designing cities. They have this specialization of urban planners, urban designers. Architecture can refer to the actual product, the architecture of a building, or it can refer to the method or style used to design the building. So when you talk about architecture, it can be the product. Wow, that's a very good architecture. You visit places, like in some other countries, you visit some other countries and see for yourself their architecture. Like in Singapore, in other countries such as in Europe, you visit their places and discover and had a first hand experience of what they have in their architecture. But also, when you talk about architecture, it also refers to the method of style. So in theory of architecture later on, or even in your uh, history of architecture, you will discover, you will see uh, different styles of architecture. So, architecture compared to a human body, or an analogy of architecture profession. This is a good analogy of the architecture profession. So architecture cannot survive alone. It has to be a team effort when you are constructing a building. When you are constructing a building, when your aim is to design a building, it cannot just be done by an architect alone. There should be help from other profession. So other professions such as the electrical engineer, the electronics engineer, the mechanical engineer, the sanitary engineer, and the structural or civil engineer. Now, as a simple analogy, through a human body or through a human body, when you talk about electrical engineer, it has something. It is into the circulatory system. Ano ba yung circulatory system? Circulation, no, uh, of our nerves. Hindi, circulatory system, no? And also when you talk about electronics or yung CCTV and systems expert, it falls to the profession of it falls on the profession or to the profession of electronics engineer. So nervous system, it is likened to the nervous system of the human body. Yung mechanical engineer, so when you talk about mechanical engineer, it includes the air conditioning system, it includes the uh, fire protection system. So it is likened to the respiratory system of our body. Also, the sanitary engineer, or in some cases, we have here the master plumber. So they are likened to the digestive system of a human body. And when you talk about skeletal engineer, I mean skeletal engineer. Sorry. Erase. Structural or civil engineer, they are likened to the skeletal system of our body, which we're in the strength, the stability, the support of every part of the body are governed by the skeletal system. But when you talk about architect, nakikita nyo sa screen, no? Yun. Ito yung itsura, yung muka. But of course, hindi lang porket architect, yun na yung facade lang yung makikita. But the proper placement of the nose, eyes, mouth, proper placement of proper color, proper design of hair, and something like that. So when you talk about being an architecture profession or becoming an architect, so we have these allied professions or professionals that we need to be with us in accomplishing or finishing the design or making us the design or direction of the building to be successful and that it will meet the needs of the users later on. So what's really the work of an architect? So let me just read this to you so that it will not take us very long. So this is still based on the RA 9266, again the Architecture Law or the Architecture Act of 2004. This is the scope, site physical planning and the design, construction or enlargement, conservation, renovation and remodeling of the buildings, restoration or alteration of a building or group of buildings. Also, under this is the planning, architectural designing and structural conceptualization, consultation, consultancy giving, oral or written advice and direction, schematic design, design development, contract documents and construction phases including professional consultancies, preparation of architectural plans, specification, bill of materials, estimates, general conditioning, bidding, okay, so and so on and so forth. So let me just skip this one. So this is your activity after this presentation. Choose 3 scopes of architecture profession based on RA 9266. So nakita nyo kanina, balik natin doon. Scope, no? So ABCD, you may focus on this ABCD, no? Because these are really the scope of what we are doing in architecture profession until letter J. So, explain the activity involved in the following scopes by making an essay. So, I'll just give the details kung ano kahaba. Siguro mga 1,000 words siguro. No? Hindi. Ano lang, maikli lang. Mga 100 words. We'll see. And from the internet or from some books, you can kindly give an actual scenario. Maybe some architects or who are involved in such practice or such scope of practice of architecture. So for now, that's what we have. I hope na hindi kayo inantok and I hope na okay lang kayo. Tsaka medyo somehow naintindihan nyo kung ano yung ginagawa natin sa architecture. But still, as we progress, you will come to understand it more and more and more so that you can decide if you will still continue. Hindi, joke lang. Let me just tell you that even though it's challenging, especially during this time of pandemic, I really look forward that this will still be exciting semester for all of us. We will have a lot of things to do like modeling, not modeling na marampa ka sa ramp, no, but modeling some basta later on I'll just give it to you one by one so that you will understand it better. So thank you so much. See you when I see you. I do not know when we'll be meeting each other physically, but let's just embrace this situation that we are learning virtually or through online. God bless. Bye. Ay, why ko na